Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of This Is a Woman podcast. And I have with me today such a fun guest. Her name is Morgan. She is a California native, just like me, but she is living in DC, and there are times I'm jealous she's in DC, but there are times I like being able to go to the beach. So I think there's pros and cons to that. But Morgan is killing it up in DC. She is in charge of an amazing group called YWA America. And Morgan, can you just dive maybe a little bit of how you got started with the YWA America and what it is?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. And you say that sometimes you're jealous of me, but sometimes I'm jealous of you being out there in beautiful California. So the feeling is mutual and we can kind of connect on that. But yeah, thank you so much again for having me. And I went to a small Christian college back in California where I'm from. And then I had graduated and was doing grad school online. And a friend had told me about Concerned Women for America. And I pulled up their website and I read their values and what they do. And I said, you know, this is right up my alley. This is everything I'm passionate about, their integration of faith and politics. And so I kind of submitted my contact info and got a little more involved. And then they had internships. And so I said, well, I have the summer free. I'll become an intern, or I'll apply to be an intern. So I applied, was blessed to be accepted. I came out for 7 weeks to spend the summer in DC. And then I ended up never leaving. They offered me a job, which I'm so blessed to have been offered and accepted. And so, yeah, I've been with YWA and CWA for a little over 2 years now, which is just crazy how time flies and just how the Lord truly has all our steps planned. So YWA for America is the high school, collegiate, young professional arm of Concerned Women for America, which is a women's public policy organization rooted in our Christian faith and then protecting biblical values through prayer, education, and advocacy.
Yeah, and you touched on interning there and then it turning into working there. And I think something that's really cool is we interned in DC the same summer. And so we were at different places, but I know, like, being in DC, and if you're working in the conservative Christian world, it's kind of easy to find the small circle that is up there with that group and get connected. And something I love is that summer, just from the interns I interned with and watching the CWA interns and kind of just different interns up in DC, is seeing what everyone's up to now. I feel like you mentioned, God really designs your path and like your steps, and I feel like He's really done that for every person that I got to know that summer, and I'm just watching everyone really live out God's plan for their life. So I love watching you be able to do that. And YWA, so you mentioned that's the high school, college, young professional group. And do you have to be in DC to be part of YWA, or what does that look like for those that are listening and maybe have never heard of YWA?
Yeah, definitely. So no, we have girls all across the country. I think we're represented in 38 or 39 states, so getting close to being everywhere. But you can either be a chapter president, and so we have chapters that meet on high school, college campuses, that host regular meetings where they go through our education booklets on our core issues, but also focus on building that like-minded community where you can pray together and learn together. And especially college campuses can be so lonely when you're a Christian conservative, so being able to have that community is so important. And so that is what being a chapter president looks like. And then if your school has one, you could join and be a chapter member and be involved that way. And then maybe if you just don't have that time commitment to give to being a president, or maybe you're in beauty school or grad school online or just a next phase of life, you can be a YWA ambassador. And that is a more individualized role, really serving as a point of contact in your community and on your campus for us. So our ambassadors have testified to state legislatures. We've helped them create their speech and helped them, tell them where they need to go and organize that. They've come out to get out the vote bus rallies and share why they're passionate about voting and why everyone should vote. They've created social media videos, written articles, had meetings with their congressional representatives. So really, sky's the limit on ways you can be involved. And then you're also just joining this network of like-minded young women all across the country.
I love that. And I love that, you see people, they're ambassadors for other organizations and things like that. And sometimes when you're an ambassador, there's really not much for you to do, or you get maybe just the monthly email. But YWA, you guys just go above and beyond of really plugging everyone in and showing them how to get involved in public policy and have your Christian values and worldview. And I mean, I joined YWA when I was in college, and now I still kind of just follow along on the social media and get all the little group messages. But something I loved about it, and you can probably relate being from California as well, is in California to be a Christian and conservative in college, in high school, even in your young adult life, it can feel really lonely, or it can feel like you're kind of the outcast. Not many people agree with you. And joining YWA was the first time I really felt, wow, I'm not the only girl that thinks this way. And that now I think there's a lot more ambassadors in California, but just across the nation, it's such an encouraging organization to get a part of and just learn that other girls your age have the same values. And what have you seen out of now being in charge of YWA, what have you seen just maybe relationship-wise between girls and YWA? Like, how are they do they talk over social media? Do they meet up in person? What does that look like?
Yeah. So we have a group message that all of our leaders are in, and it is honestly the sweetest thing. Occasionally a girl will pop in a prayer request, and then it'll kind of snowball and multiple girls will send in a prayer request, which is so sweet to see them connect that way. But we'll also get sometimes a picture, and it'll be that one girl is visiting maybe a friend in another state or family or whoever, and she knew that there was a YWA girl there, and so they went to coffee or they grabbed lunch, or they'll kind of pop in and say, hey, like, my school's having this event, or like this issue popped up or whatever. And like you said, to have everyone else kind of share, like, you're not alone, like maybe we hosted the same speaker and this was what we did, and giving advice that way, or just sharing, like, again, you're not alone, like, I've walked through the same thing, especially because we have a few years of an age range in YWA. So it's really neat to see maybe those girls who just graduated college give advice to the girls who are just now entering or still in high school. So that's one of my favorite parts of YWA, is just seeing that Christ-centered community build one another up.
I love that. And how you mentioned whether it's meeting in person or just being in the group text. And I think a lot of the YWA girls kind of all follow each other on social media too. Mm-hmm. And I think that, like, when I watch those interactions, they're so encouraging, because when you're in your, again, high school or early 20s and you're posting pro-life stuff or things against abortion, it's so easy for your followers or random people to come on and tear you down and attack what you have to say. And I just love watching the YWA girls support each other when they're posting things like that and encouraging one another. For all the girls and people that are listening, if they want to become more involved with YWA, whether they're a young girl that wants to sign up, or if someone wants to donate because they love what YWA is doing, where can they find out more about YWA?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. So on concernedwomen.org is the Concerned Women for America page, which is our parent organization. But one of the tabs will say Young Women for America, and you can find ways to get involved there. There should be a donate button somewhere as well. And then if you want to find us on Instagram, YWFORA is our name. And then you could always send us a DM and we'll respond and get you connected in that way too.
Perfect. And for everyone listening, I'll go ahead and I'll tag the Instagram in the caption and all that so everyone can follow. And then last little thing on YWA, obviously anyone can follow the Instagram and keep up with what's going on, but is there something someone has to do to become an official ambassador, or how does a girl approach doing that?
Yeah. Again, feel free to send us a DM on Instagram, or on that website there'll be a little contact submission form that you can fill out, and then we'll reach out to you and kind of share the ways you can be involved, whether that's you happen to go to a school that has a chapter, we'd love to get you plugged in that way, or again, about the ambassador role, we can send you the application. We'd be happy to do that. Perfect.
And CWA, YWA, that's why you're in DC. Again, you said you went for your internship and then you really never went back. So how has that transition been for you? I know when you finish college, when you're from an area you love, then to pick up and move across the nation, I think that's something a lot of post-grad people deal with, or even girls when they're done with high school, when they go to a new college area and they're away from home. So how has that been for you moving?
Yeah. I think it helped that to start, it kind of came in chunks. So I went out as an intern and I thought, okay, you can do anything for 7 weeks. I'll be out here in DC. And then actually, I was offered a 1 month interim kind of extra internship to help because someone in my role had left. And so I did that. And same thing, you can do anything for a month, a little extra time in DC. And then after that, when they offered me the job, I just had so much peace of it that I knew it was from the Lord, because that whole summer I would meet other interns and they'd all kind of dream about when they'd return to DC or what they were going to do next. And I always joked that that wasn't me. Like, I was happy to go back to California. So when the Lord did open these doors and provide these next steps, I knew that even if it was scary or seemed intimidating to move all the way across the country, that I knew that He would provide and be there, because that was truly His plan. So that was so helpful to know that I was just walking into His path. And then also, I think knowing that I had friends already from work, it helps so much when you work at a place that you share so many of the same values, so you have the same faith and mission in life. So that was so helpful to know I'm not just moving out here and going to be all alone. I have these friends to start with. And then being connected to a great church as well. Church is such a great way to build community and friendship and mentors. So that was so helpful as well to know that, again, I'm not alone, but that the body of Christ is here, and I can continue to get connected in that way.
And you said you had a lot of peace and just you were ready to make this move. What do you think it looks like, or how did it look for you being a Christian and to really just trust that God's calling you to a place, or just being aware of, is this God calling me here? Is this myself wanting to do this? How does that look for you?
Yeah. And yeah, I think it can look different for everyone. And I think sometimes, God might call you to something and you don't necessarily have the same amount of peace, but because it might be scary, but He's still calling you to it and you can still sense that. But again, I think I knew that since I had never been the one that was saying, I'm going to be in DC, I'm going to end up here, I knew that it was nothing of my own desire or decision, but that it truly was His plan for me. So that was so helpful to know and walk into, and then just sharing with, friends and family members and them sharing the same support. I remember I called my mom and I told her that they offered me a job, and she was so happy, and she was like, I knew this was going to happen, or I had a feeling that this was going to happen. So again, that was so helpful to know that I have their support and that they see the Lord's hand in it as well.
I think it's such an important thing how you mentioned talking to your mom and talking to your family and seeing and hearing from them, because I think sometimes they can see the picture better than we can even see it for ourselves when we're in it. So to get the support of your family and friends and knowing you're making the right decision, I feel like that's God just kind of giving another, here you go, like everyone's on board, so get on board as well. And then you also mentioned joining a church out there, and I think nowadays it can be really hard if you grew up in the same area or grew up going to the same church most of your life to find a new church, no matter where you go live. It's a hard thing to do. So what did that look like for you, finding a new church?
Yeah. So when I first got out here and I was an intern, I kind of had the mentality that I'll go to church, but I'm just excited to maybe kind of try out a couple of different churches, because really I've only gone to 2 churches my whole life. So I've never really hopped around and experienced different churches. So I thought that would be exciting. And there really are some great churches here in DC. So I had some friend recommendations and went to a few. All were great, Bible-believing churches. But then the third one that I found just really loved and connected with. So I said, okay, I have a few weeks left. I'll keep coming here. And then once I stayed, I continued to go there and have become a member there and really been involved. And so that's how, also looking at the website and the sermons and just really making sure, does this align with my values? Are they preaching from the Word of God? Or are they just going up there and maybe sharing an inspirational message instead of truly going verse by verse and digging deep into God's Word?
I really like that you mentioned the verse by verse and digging deep. That's something when I have moved around looking for churches, I love to look for I love the topical messages for like a Wednesday night service or a young adult service, but I really do love going to church Sunday and the pastor literally going verse by verse and not being able to skip anything and just learn things that I wouldn't learn on my own. And I think that's great advice for girls, again, that are going to be moving out of home soon to go to college or are leaving, again, their college area where maybe they found a church, to look into the website, get familiar with the church, and it's okay to hop around until you find something. So thank you for sharing on that. Another thing you noted, though, was to make sure the church has similar values, and we kind of talked about YWA and getting with community that has a similar values. And so can you touch a little bit on maybe back to like YWA and yourself, what those values are that YWA holds, that you hold? Because I think a lot of people, and unfortunately I think a lot of Christians individually hold different values, which shouldn't be the case. If we're a Christian, we should all be aligned, but I think they do. So can you maybe touch on where you stand with your values?
Yeah, happy to. So I think first and foremost, knowing that the Bible is God's word and it's the ultimate truth, and that we live in a world that has absolute truth and that we can go and rely on that. And the truths that we find in there are, that we're all made in the image of God. And so those of us that are unborn in our mother's womb, that we were created with a purpose and uniquely and wonderfully made. And so protecting the unborn and focusing on the sanctity of life is so important to me. And then not only did he create us in his image, but he created us male and female. So knowing that men are men and women are women, and we can't switch that. And so whether that is protecting women's spaces or women's sports, and truly just what it means to be a woman, which is what your podcast is all about, which I love. So just focusing on that and the unique giftings that the Lord created us in when he created us female. So that would be another big value. And then, defense of the family and the importance of having a mother and a father and protecting that family unit. And so those would be a few that I hold dear to that are also YWA values. And then I think probably another one to mention would be religious liberty. So we've been blessed to be in this country that has Christian values, but also upholding our religious freedom so that everyone can worship how they would like, and that isn't infringed on for us, and that we're able to worship the Lord. And so those would be some values that I take with me in my everyday life that we also have at YWA.
Those are just such great values, and that's what I love about YWA and that community is it's not just a single issue community. It's really informing girls on all the issues and defending and fighting for all the biblical issues. And so if you're a young girl listening, or if you have a daughter listening and that's the value you hold and your family holds, definitely get plugged in with YWA. And again, to be surrounded by girls that hold the same values, I think is such a powerful thing to get together and encourage and uplift each other. But we also, I think, we're in a time right now where we're so divided politically, religiously, everything. The nation is very divided. It's very polarized. And so again, being in California or even DC, that's a very polarized area to be in. And being in your early 20s, I think it can be really hard to interact with people sometimes when everything's so polarized, but it doesn't have to be. And I think you can have friendships with people who have different values. So it's important to have a group of girls that have the same values and encourage each other, but that doesn't mean you can't have friends with other values. So can you maybe touch on, I know we've talked about this before, but can you touch on your experience maybe with having friends that hold different values?
Yeah, definitely. I would love to. I think it's so important, maybe that inner circle that are your the girls that you go to for advice and for wisdom, and to really pour into you to share those same values. I think that's so important. But it is so crucial to not just be in a bubble that I am inclined to do. It happens that it's so easy to just get in your bubble and not reach out to others. And I think that's important for multiple reasons to reach out. Number one, if it's people who aren't believers, we want to be sharing the gospel with them and making sure that they have heard that and hear the good news and know how the Lord loves them and wants to save them. And so I think that's so important. But then also just other values and viewpoints is so important because it can make your viewpoint stronger by hearing other sides to it. And it also just opens you up to kind of see, okay, if now I understand where this other side might be coming from, I can better articulate maybe why I believe that my view is correct, or how maybe how the Bible explains that view, or what the Lord has for it. How to defend it and articulate it because you know what the other side is thinking. And I know for myself, I have a couple friends who we share some different values, but they even are so kind and encouraging. And one time I even practiced my work speech for them that was on the girls' sports issue, and they said, we might not agree on every single point, but we do find spots where we agree. The in society, okay, there's nothing in the middle, but usually there is American agrees with on most people agree on certain parts. And so I think having that other perspective kind of makes you realize, okay, we're not as polarized as we think. It is a spiritual battle, and there are things to work on, but there are also things where we are in agreement that we could come together on.
And like you mentioned just there at the end, it's because we disagree on some things doesn't mean we have to disagree on all things. And again, the women's sports issue, what a male is, what a woman is, I think that's a lot of things that most of the people can get together and agree on, regardless of what party you're with or what values you hold as a whole. I mean, here in California, we're watching so many people that we've never worked with or partnered with before, whether they're pro-abortion people or pro-LGBT people. They're against the T and the Q and the plus, and against the whole trans situation. You can work together and come together on that. And I love that you were able to sit there and practice your work speech with those friends of yours, because I think that goes to show that we don't necessarily agree on all these issues, but as girls and as friends, we're supporting each other in what we're pursuing. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, because right now, just with how polarized everything is on social media and even in person, you see so many people tearing each other down for having different values. And I think, again, that comes with a level of maturity to realize that we can have different values. But I know even some of my closest friends, we don't have necessarily all the same values, and we've made jokes like when I left to go to DC for a little bit, it was, I'm not super supportive of the issues you're going to be fighting, but I'm so supportive of you, following your dreams and following your goals. And I think in a community of girls, that's such a powerful thing to have. And I wish we would see more people having it, but I loved being able to hear from you and hear that you have friends, because I think with the job you have, and it's something I experienced too, not only do we have these values, it's what we talk about every day. It's what we go and fight on every day. And then to still be able to have friends and community that see things differently, I think is such a needed thing and a beautiful thing. And I do love that you noted it's also a way to understand their argument better, and then to be able to almost argue it back, because we don't necessarily always understand their viewpoint. And so to be able to, oh, that's why you think that? Okay, well, this is why it's wrong still, but it's a good way for us to kind of practice and learn more and not be stuck in our bubble. And so, I just love everything you're doing, Morgan, because it's the YWA, it's being with girls that have the same values, but not making yourself stay in this bubble. And I think that's such a hard thing nowadays. But again, like I said, it's such a needed thing, and it's such an awesome thing to have, especially when you move across the country like you did and just trying to find community and all that. But what advice could you give? I guess it's kind of like a two-parter. It's to the girls that are listening, but also there's a lot of parents on here that have younger girls that are even in second grade or some in high school. And so what advice could you give to the girls about just finding community and sticking strong to your values, but also, we'll start with that. So I'll give that to you.
Perfect. Yeah, happy to. Yeah, so I think some advice would be to find that like-minded community. So obviously we're happy to have you at YWA, but even if that's what this next season looks like for you, if that's finding it at your school, finding it at church. But I think that's so important to find girls that you can encourage one another with the Bible, and with maybe talking points if you're on one of these cultural, political issues and you're not quite sure what to do or what to say, that you have friends who can help you with. So I think that's so important. And then sometimes I think we can get so caught up on a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, or what am I going to do after college, and so many things. And really the last, I guess it was, I don't know, 6 to 12 months, somewhere in there, after I had finished undergrad and I was doing grad school online and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. And again, I just had peace that the Lord would provide what was next, and that my responsibility was just to do the next right thing, take each day, each step, each decision one at a time. And that doesn't mean that you can't prepare for the future, but just knowing that you don't have to have it all figured out, that the Lord truly will provide, and be faithful, and reminding yourselves of the way that He's been faithful before, to reassure you that He'll do it again. So yeah, I think those two things of just one day at a time, one step at a time, and then finding that community that you can have to help you.
Perfect. And I love that you talked about the one day at a time thing. I think a lot of girls that are getting involved with programs like YWA, or searching to be an ambassador or to host a college group and all things like that, are kind of more type A girls, or more planning things out. And I think it's okay to say one day at a time. You don't have to know where you're going to be in 5 years. And I mean, you can probably attest to this as well. If I were to go back 5 years ago from today and say and see what I'm doing now, that would have never been on my 5-year plan.
Yeah.
So
no, not at all. Yeah. And the Lord is so gracious and kind beyond we could ever imagine. I think, yeah, both of us feel the same way, that anything we could have even dreamed up 5 years ago, wouldn't even compare to what's happening now. Not that that means that life is perfect or that it's not hard, but that truly His ways are better, and we can't even dream it up. It's good. So we might as well just trust in the Lord.
Exactly. And that's something I've kind of been focusing on lately, even in my own life, is okay, look how great God has been, and so why should I ever try to put Him in a box? Why try to tell Him, God, this is what I want? Or instead say, God, you know my desires, but you lead the way and you plan out, because again, He'll provide and plan things out greater than we could ever imagine. But now to the second part of my question is, what advice could you maybe give to the parents of young children nowadays that are in elementary school or in high school, and the parents are, I don't know how to keep my kids on the right values, or where to get them plugged in with, or anything like that? Maybe if you can give advice to them.
Yeah. And so I kind of touched a little on it on CWA, but Concerned Women for America shares all the same values, and they have prayer action chapters that meet all across the country. So if you're a mom and you want to get connected with a like-minded organization, definitely check out concernedwomen.org as well, and they'll have resources on what's going on in your state, in your county. They'll lobby the local school boards and city council and things like that. So that's a great way to get connected and kind of be involved, but also just to have those conversations with your kids, to not just kind of, I don't know, look into it yourself, but to share with them what you're learning and ways that they can really go to God's word for advice, and that they know that these cultural issues and political issues really are biblical issues, so that they are growing up knowing what they should believe and defend, whether that's with abortion or transgender or anything, because we know that whether if they're in public school or just honestly anywhere, if they're on social media, they are hearing these things about LGBTQ and other things. So it's really our job and our privilege to be able to make sure that they know what the Word of God says. And so that would be some of my advice.
Perfect. That I couldn't have said it better myself. And if you're a parent and you're listening and your younger daughter is on social media and you might not love that, at least encourage her to follow YWA on social media, so then she's at least seeing great things. So I think that's a great way. And then I like to do this for everyone, is just give them a little time. If there's anything on your heart you want to say about anything we talked on, or anything we haven't got to talk on, that you would just want the girls and the parents and people that are listening to this podcast to hear? So I'm just going to open the floor for that.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I think kind of what I touched on, truly just to take everything one day at a time, and one step at a time, that the Lord is faithful and will come through. And then also that we're not alone. I think that's why I love so much what you're doing out in California, in our beautiful state. I think something funny that can happen being out here in DC, and the first question that's always asked is, where are you from? Because everyone's always from somewhere else. And so then whenever you say California, you kind of can get some jokes or some teasing, and either they can't imagine that there's conservatives there, or they just think, they see the news and how left the state has become. But I love that you are still there fighting for it, and that you believe in it, and I feel very strongly the same way. And so I think you're a great example that even where it can feel very blue and dark and just maybe spiritually dead, that there are so many believers and people that believe the same things and fighting, and that's the same all across the country. So I think just remembering that we're all in this together, and that we're not alone, and there's so many more out there who believe these things, and that's why we get to go and find them and encourage them and equip them so that we can all have a louder voice.
Perfect. Well, you all heard it here first. You're not alone. There's ways to get involved and get with like-minded people. And last little fun question I ask everyone. Sometimes I have to preface it with, do you drink coffee? But I know there's tons of coffee drinking happening at the CWA and YWA office. I've been able to visit before, and you guys have the cutest whole coffee setup station and all that. But on the coffee issue, what is your go-to coffee drink?
Yes, I love this question. I worked at a coffee shop for 2 years in college, and it was so much fun. And my taste for coffee really changed from the beginning to the end. If people get extra sweet vanilla lattes, that's wonderful, but that's how I started. I needed so many extra flavors, and then slowly weaned more and more. So my go-to now is an iced Americano with 1 or 2 pumps of vanilla and then a splash of whole milk. So that is my go-to drink.
Ooh, that sounds good. It's funny that that's your go-to drink, because I had Aaron Getz on the podcast, who's with March for Life and also up in DC. And then I had a director of a pregnancy center, so kind of dealing with the same issues. And their answers were nearly the same, iced Americano or straight black coffee. And I always joke, the only way to survive working and living in DC or working in the pro-life movement, conservative movement, is lots of black coffee, lots of strong Americanos.
Yes.
So it keeps adding up. All the same people are drinking the same thing, and it makes sense. Same thing. I needed the sugary drinks, and now I'm I'll take just the black coffee, Americano, cold brew, call it a day. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Morgan, for being on here. And I know we kind of plugged the YWA and CWA info. And again, for everyone listening or watching, I'll put it in the caption. But what is a way, if people are love what you're doing and just interested in your life, do you have your own social media they can follow, or?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what it is. My own Instagram is Morgan. So it's MORGANN. KATEE. So that is me. If you want to find me, I'm happy to have you on there. And then, if you also want to reach out via YWA or any other way, I'm happy to answer questions that you might have and just get you connected, or even just share advice or share anything I can to help, whether you're in California or anywhere or in DC.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Morgan, and keep up the good fight and keep up the good work in DC.
You too, sister.